This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is mustache.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. I am very excited about today's show. We have Michaelallenrose. Michaelallenrose is an award-winning writer, musician, and performer based in Chicagoland. He won back-to-back Wonderland Awards for Bizarro Fiction in 2021 and 2022 for his novel Jurrasichrist and his collection The Last 5 Minutes of the Human Race, respectively. He hosts events like the Ultimate Bizarro Showdown and releases industrial music under the name Flood Damage. He likes good tea and cats. Welcome, Michael. Very glad to have you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this will be a fun one. Before we get to my questions, we need to tell the podcast listeners what we're wearing. We always dress up in these costumes, and so
Sure.
what did you choose to go with for the YouTube viewers?
Well, today I thought I'd get a little meta. So I went with I'm actually disguised as a disguise kit.
Oh, yes, I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you see the, well, if you look really closely, you can see this isn't my actual mustache. I'm wearing several mustaches on top of my mustache.
Yes.
It's layered, you know. So that way, if I'm in a hurry to change disguises, I can just tear one off and it's already done.
Yes, it's the Mission Impossible double reveal. Like,
Exactly.
one off and
Double,
then the
triple.
next. Yes, and masks
Exactly.
all the way down. I like that
Exactly.
a lot. It reminded me of a Stephen Wright joke, which I am totally, lifting, but I went with this full body tattoo of myself, only taller.
You know,
So,
the likeness is incredible.
right?
I have
It's
to
yeah,
say.
I know a good artist. My soon to be stepkid is a tattoo artist. I
Oh,
got
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
my hands. And yes, so they are very talented and we're able to do this perfect likeness of me, only
Only taller.
a little bit taller. So
Yeah.
I appreciate
I
that.
gotta say, and when you find a tattoo artist that can tattoo in non-Euclidean space, that's you stick to that artist. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
somebody you're gonna go
I'm
back to.
always going back, very reasonably priced,
Hmm.
considering the amount of time for a full body tattoo. That's a lot of time on the table, but
Absolutely.
yeah, it was an excellent deal. So, Michael, I've been excited to talk to you about all the other stuff you do in addition to your writing. So, what all have you been up to outside of the writing world?
Outside of the writing world, I do a lot of different things. I've always kind of been eclectic in my interests, and I've really always been inspired by artists and creators that do a variety of things. And I guess I realized early on I was never going to be the kind of guy who like does this one thing extremely well. That's never going to be me. I've always been more of a dilettante. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bounce around a little bit, and
Yep.
I find that rewarding. And I think the fans that I've gained over my the beginning of my career here, they want that eclecticism. I think that's one of the selling points. Because I always feel like if you like my music, you might like my writing, or if you like my books, you might like whatever I do live, like whatever ridiculous comedic BS I'm doing, on stage or whatever. So I feel like it all kind of serves itself. It everything supports the other things.
Yes, early on in my career, like the advice I got was like, no, just, find a genre, write
Mhm.
to that genre, write the same book over and over, write a series of 30 books, and that does not entertain me. And I'm like, no,
Exactly.
I need to be doing lots and lots of different things. And one of the things you're doing is a writing project, but you're not the exclusive writer. You're creating an anthology. Tell me about that one.
Yeah. So that's brand new. So I'm finally taking steps into putting anthologist on my CV this year. I've got a little company that I call Rochambeau. publications, which I always put my zines and my chapbooks out. So I've had a Patreon for about 5 years now. And every month I'll do like a special exclusive edition of something I've written or make up some random project or whatever, and send it
Yeah.
out to people and make these little zines. And I publish those things under the name Rochambeau, which was the name of my theater company when I first moved to Chicago about 12 or 15 years ago. Um, but I've kind of kept that name. So I decided this year, I don't have the time or energy to jump into publishing full time. I know plenty of people who've done that, and I don't really want to feel any more suicidal than normal.
Oh
So
my
I'm like,
gosh. Yeah,
maybe not.
I own a small press and don't do it full time because
Exactly.
how do you keep the lights on problem is
Yeah.
persistent. So
Well,
yeah,
that's kind of how, I was thinking of it that way, but then I'm like, well, there's nothing stopping me from doing a one-off here and there,
yeah,
just because. And luckily I've garnered enough friendly relationships with people in the industry to have worked with a variety of tiny little presses over time. So I've kind of gotten to see behind the scenes a little bit like
yeah,
what kind of works for them and what doesn't. So I'm giving it a shot, and I'm lucky that again, being kind, trying to be nice and make friends has helped me so much in
yes,
all of those different things that I do. And in this case, it was like I'm asking people who are, big fish, like Stoker Award winners and people whose careers are exploding, people who don't have to write for free ever again in their careers. And when I ask them to do this, they're like, "Oh, for you, yeah." And I'm like,
that's great. I
I
mean, well,
mean, that's
well,
such an amazing feeling.
well, and there's a valuable lesson for aspiring writers out there too. There are people where I have said, we're looking at 100 manuscripts in a given August. That's when we
Mhm.
do our open submissions period, and part of the calculation is this a person I want to work with? Because you're going to
Yes,
be working with a person for all, and so be kind to others. It is really good
100%,
for your career. So,
100%.
what's the theme for the anthology?
So it's called Fragile. It will be available for pre-order in June, and then the proposed release date is October 1st of 2024. But it is about a moving guy, moving boxes for a family that hasn't come to town yet, and he's moving them in, unpacking the boxes. He's already sent his guys home. He's just got to take the truck back to work and call it a day. And he thinks he sees one of the boxes move, which is not supposed to happen. And this was originally going to be a short story of mine that I was doing for the aforementioned Patreon. I was like, well, I'll come up with this fun little horror
Yeah,
or whatever, and I'm sitting there with my colleagues at the library. I work part-time at a library as well, and I'm chatting with them about this, and I'm like, man, I really have to get this story done. I owe these people that, my Patreon, I owe them something. They
right,
gave me
right.
money. I need to get this done. And the more I thought about what's in the box, the more possibilities I came up with.
Yeah,
And it started to get ridiculous. And I was sitting with a friend of mine there at the library, and I'm like, we've got like 20 different possible endings now. And almost defeatedly, I was like, well, I guess I could write 20 different endings and have them like roll a die to decide which one. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to write them. I know writers.
yeah. Oh, that's
So,
great.
so it ends up being a shared prologue about this guy who's having this weird experience moving these people in, and he rolls a die because he doesn't have a coin. He's like, I don't shouldn't do this. Should I do this? I don't know. Before he can even think about what it means, he rolls a 20-sided die. So there are 20 different authors, each of which has a different thing in that box, and then the story is him dealing with the consequences of his actions.
That is very cool. Yes, I love those kinds of anthologies where you can read them in pieces, but really, ideally, that's one I would want to take in straight through. Like I would just want to go, oh, where did the next author go with this?
I've
And so
always been a big fan of shared world anthologies or like high concept anthologies where people are coming at it from different directions but arriving in a similar place. Like that to me is it's like a well-crafted album, right? Like I think like a
yeah,
musician sometimes I want there to be ebbs and flows. I want it to be able to go ups and downs, and you follow this kind of sine wave, but I want it to be thematically resonant too.
yeah. Yeah,
And I
we
think,
put out one of those. We put out, anthologies with themes that would be like, we did one that was the year of publishing women, only
oh
queer
yeah,
authors. We've done that, but we did one where it was this kind of literary experiment. I wanted to see if this was even possible.
uh,
For years, I had said to my students, stories follow this pattern for a reason. Like this is the way that our brains work. Our ancient ancestors, are going, what's over that hill over there? And that is the ark, right? And then something bad
Right.
happens and they run back to the cave, right?
Right.
And so as an experiment, I asked authors if they would write a story where about two-thirds of the way through the story, one character turns to the other and goes, this reminds me of, and then tells the other character a
Ooh.
story. And then the other character, and then at the end of their story, that
Wow.
story has become relevant to their story. The trick is
Wow.
none of the authors knew what story was going to be in there inside of their own. And
Oh my
so it
God.
is it's a a Matryoshka doll. Each story
Yeah.
has a story inside of it, all the way down to this little kind of interstitial where it's like something about stories explicitly, and then they all work their way back out. So you do have to read them straight through, but you realize like, oh, all these stories affected all the others. Only the authors had no idea because
That's
stories
incredible.
naturally work in a certain way.
That's incredible. It's a nested story or
Yep.
nested series of stories. Yeah, like you said, like the Matryoshka doll, or almost like it's like that old Exquisite Corpse, the old surrealist
Yes.
game, but almost better because you have some narrative control in between. So it's giving you
Yes.
some
Well, and,
arcs
and
and
you know,
some.
with the control, the way we could manipulate it was what order do we put the stories in? And so
Sure.
I did have some kind of ability to manipulate things a little bit that way. But and then after one round, then the authors did get to see one another's stories and say, oh, okay, if I add this little
Oh,
bit, it makes
sure.
mine connect better. But the first time through, they were really taking a gamble because I may have reached out to them and said, nope, I was wrong. This doesn't work at
Yeah,
all. It's a
yeah.
mess. Sorry about you wasting your time,
Right.
and they wouldn't
That's
have had a story
amazing
that
though.
they
I
could have turned over
Yeah,
to anybody else. So they took a gamble on it, but it came out, it was really fun. And
that's
this one,
awesome.
I just think that this idea of I got to tell you, you'll get a kick out of this. I have a true story version of this. A friend of mine, the movers were at her house
Hmm.
and they were moving things and they picked up a box, and one of her boxes started to vibrate, and
Oh, oh yes.
everybody's just incredibly anxious, and she just walks over, takes that one from the mover, leaves the room in shame.
Oh no.
It was,
Ah.
and yeah, I was telling my partner this, and she's like, A, those movers have had that experience before. That is
Yeah.
not the end of the world for them. Like, that is not, but B, you take the batteries out before they put
Right.
the thing in with the
Also, that's just good maintenance for your electronics, like anything
Right.
that's battery
Just
operated. I
remove the
mean,
batteries. Oh, it
right?
was so funny. And hearing
That's
her tell the
amazing.
story, she was so embarrassed. And now I've told it to the world, but I will not reveal her name. So
That's
it could be any one of my friends now. None of you know which of you I'm talking about, but somebody we know has had that actual experience. Yeah,
I
I
don't.
am excited to check that out and see where, because
Yeah,
there's a lot of directions you could go with it. I totally empathize with your sense of like, I could tell 20 stories about this.
absolutely.
What
Well,
do
and
what
like I said, I came up with a list of 20, and I invited a number of authors and whatever. Out of those 20 ideas, 18 of them grabbed one of my ideas and ran with them, and only two of them had pitches where I cut some other stuff. So it feels very personal to me too. It's like
yeah.
it all comes from a place inside of me as well as meeting these collaborators, where
Right.
they live, and yeah. And
And getting to
there's a
see where they
variety of
go with
genres
that
too,
is so cool. I've got a friend who's putting out an anthology this next year. It was the first time somebody reached out to me and said, "Would you please, write a piece for this anthology?" Which was
Mhm.
very cool. It was like a nice little moment,
Yeah.
career-wise, and it's all about people finding magic that is unseen in the greater Portland area. So you have to go out and
Oh,
find some place in Portland and go, "Oh, I'm going to tell a kind of fantasy story that exists in this urban fantasy world."
oh,
And it's going to
wow.
be really fun to see where these different authors take this. And a bunch of the folks are folks that I
Absolutely.
know, and I'm like, oh, I am excited to read hers.
Oh,
So that one will
absolutely.
be fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
June,
I've
what
always
got
been
you off?
really attracted to just experimental forms in general, like of anything I'm doing. Like when I was a theater guy, I was all about the black box theater stuff. I'm
Yes.
studying the existentialists and the weird language plays and stuff. And I guess it's the same way with lit. Like I like comedy. Comedy's a big part of what I do too, but it's like comedy and horror and sex and experimentation, they all hit this place that's very visceral inside people, and I think that's what I'm attracted to in the arts, because I think most genres, it's like you're processing it in your brain and you're processing it in your gut, but horror, it scares you, sex turns you on, comedy makes you laugh. Those are all really visceral reactions to things.
Well,
Like
and they're more
your body
closely related
reacts.
than I think folks who don't
Yeah,
experience experimental theater don't realize how much of it is very funny and how much of it is terrifying. Like
absolutely.
it's you're doing Pirandello or something, and it's
Hmm.
laugh out loud funny. It's not
Oh yeah.
just oh this because this is dealing with existentialist ideas. It's dry. Like
I think
it's
what
hilarious.
taught me that is back in college reading more Beckett and doing the
Yeah,
existentialists and stuff and like Camus' The Strangers. They're funny,
yeah,
but you have to have the right worldview when you're looking at them to see why they're funny. And
yeah.
I think people see something pessimistic in them and they turn off their comedy node. But again, good comedy hits you in the gut
Right.
before you even have a chance to process it. And I think that's so I think yeah, like experimental forms, I think you can do so much that strikes beyond where people see things just, on the surface with their brain. And it hits them in a different place where they have to really sit with it for a minute.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are, and when you're going through an editing and you have that experience yourself and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, I did it. That's the
yeah,
feeling that I want the reader to have. I love those when I'm like, I kind of surprised myself. That was a success.
absolutely.
Yeah. So so this comes out on the in October, but
Yep.
people folks can start pre-ordering it June 1st. It's a long
Yes, right.
pre-order. So
Yep.
folks hop in on that one because that I will be pre-ordering that. I'm excited about that one.
Anybody who pre-orders too, I've got a couple little gifts because you're doing that tiny press thing. You got to make it worth people's
Oh
while.
yeah.
So you're gonna get a engraved wooden bookmark with a roll table for the chapters and a D20
Ah,
with your
clever.
pre-order. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So where can folks find that?
fragileanthology.com.
Fragileanthology.com. Okay, yes. So when you're not, doing music and creating an anthology, which folks don't out there don't know, it's a ton of work. In addition to writing, what has been pulling you away in terms of pop culture lately?
I'm a huge gamer. Video games have been, I'm exactly the right age
Yeah,
for anybody who's listening. This is how you can date me. I grew up with video games.
yeah.
So, like my first console as a tiny child was the Atari 2600. So I
Yep.
literally and I've stuck with them. I haven't, I never grew out of it. So it's like I'm still like a big gamer, Xbox and PC and whatever. So that tears me away from writing, editing, music.
And it is dangerous. It is evil. Like I'm like these are brilliant people creating a time suck on purpose. Like they are
Yep.
sitting around going, how can we maximize playtime? And I'm like, and you are good at it. And now I've
Yes.
played this game for 40 hours. So
Right.
so what has been grabbing you lately in the world of gaming?
Lately, you know what? I will say, as a caveat before I tell you what games, I will say that I think even though it is helping me avoid doing those creative things, it also fuels a lot
Oh
of those
yeah,
creative
they're
things.
related.
You can't create in a vacuum. And I think, especially these days, anybody who says video games aren't art hasn't played a video game in
Oh yeah.
30 years.
Yeah,
You know,
it's you're not this is not the narrative of Pong, folks. There's
right. There's so much more going on. And
yeah.
honestly, like I mean, I have cried probably at the end of as many video games as I have at movies and books over the years.
Yeah.
Because when they're done well, any art form is when it's expressed well, it can affect you in ways that you don't expect.
and
But
and
I also
also
play
and
a lot
also
of
frustrate you in ways that
oh yeah.
I think of instead of crying the frustration at the end of Mass Effect 3 where I
Oh
was like
yeah.
no what it was all a dream is the worst ending.
Right. Well,
Can't do that.
and there you go. That's one of the lessons you learn from being a gamer and a writer is you go, well, that was narratively unsatisfying.
Yep.
And then
Yeah,
you start to
and it does
analyze that.
inform us as writers. Like this is
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
never to do to your reader because it happened to me as a gamer and it was incredibly frustrating.
Absolutely. But yeah, I guess the big ones lately, so I've been playing Balatro. I don't know if you're familiar with
I no,
Balatro.
I don't know that one at all. What's that one about?
So when you look at it from the outside, it looks like poker. It looks like you're just playing poker. Standard 5 cards poker, trying to make the best poker hand. But very quickly you realize that the game is sort of playing with the realities of what the cards do and what they mean. So you start to draw cards that modify cards, and then you start to get jokers that add weird rules to the way in which you build your hands, and it ends up becoming like a deck builder, like almost like a like Slay the Spire or something like that, where you're like creating the best deck you can to
Yeah.
try to get further into the like beat the bosses and things. And you realize it's like, yeah, they basically took the mechanics of like a card deck building dungeon game and applied it to poker.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, and it's got a synthwave kind of vibe to it. It's got like the old the pixelated sort of weirdness to it, like from the old days. It's got a retro vibe that's really cool, but
As far as the graphics, does it look like a video poker or does it like change over the course of the game? How did they play with that?
some of both. It looks like video poker at first, and then as you get these jokers that modify things, some of them also have different finishes on the cards. So you'll have a standard card, but then, oh, this one's a foil card, which adds more of this. Oh, this one's a glass card, so it does this special thing, but it could also shatter when I play it. And like it just gets weirder and weirder as you get into it.
That is cool. So
Yeah,
is that on a particular platform? Which console is that on?
I've been playing that on Xbox. I know
Okay.
it's a big hit on PC, and I think probably on Switch. A lot of the indie games hit Switch these days.
Ours is an Xbox household, so that's one
Oh
I've
yeah,
got.
me too. Yep. So
Um,
highly recommend. It's one of those things. It's like, oh, I'll just play one more hand. It'll be fine.
yeah,
Be fine.
yeah,
And then an hour later, you're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. Oh, dangerous. Well, and that's one my partner and I both might like too. That's, her taste in games is very different from mine. She doesn't want to get, sucked into certain kinds of like repetitive mechanics and that kind of thing. She doesn't like the first person kind of design, but boy, she'll play
gotcha.
like a phone game forever. And that one might be a nice in between, you know. Um, so what else in the news has been pulling you away from your work lately?
Oh my God. I guess the biggest news story was the unveiling of the official picture of King Charles
I
this last
saw it.
week.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my God, he's a Dark Souls boss.
Oh,
Like you would walk into that room with that painting and you'd pull a sword because you're like, that thing's gonna come to life.
oh yeah.
There's gonna be three phases. It's gonna transform into something with like jaws
It's
as big
gonna
as my
drip out
body.
of that painting. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh, it's horrific. If folks have not seen it, whoever thought this was a good idea was like, he likes art, he likes stuff that's modern, but I've got to
Hmm.
do a portrait. I'm gonna do I'm trying to remember the name of the Majinsky like red, and then just slap his face in the middle. Like it's horrifying. It's
It's
just
like
all these reds, and
he's emerging from a sea of viscera. Like
yeah,
it's like,
yes.
but he's
Um,
happy about it.
yeah, and yeah, yes, exactly. It's
And
somebody
there's a butterfly on his shoulder, which again, as a gamer, I think is his healer. You have to take the
uh,
butterfly out first, or you're gonna have a bad time.
otherwise, yeah. Somebody found the picture from Ghostbusters 2
Oh
of
yeah.
I can't even remember it's not Zool. What was the character?
Oh, the Carpathian, Vigo the
Yes. Ego
Carpathian.
the Carpathian and put them next to each other and you're like that's uncomfortably close. Like somebody got the job and they were like, what am I going to do that's going to be noteworthy? I know I'm going to paint the king as this horrific oh yeah, it's so if folks have not checked it out, King Charles portrait is a thing. It's
This otherworldly demon, that's yeah, it's amazing.
well,
And the fact that that's the official portrait. It's
right.
not even some modern artist trying to do like a sly homage kind of. No, that's the official portrait. The royal family paid for that.
Well, and it makes me wonder, like, to what extent was the artist themselves saying, I want to comment on imperialism, and so I'm going to do so by taking a check from the imperialists and painting them as bloody as the empire has been. Like, it is so gross. But if that is the case, incredibly clever. I'll take
Oh
it.
yeah.
Like,
And it does though. You look at it, it has final boss energy to it. You're
yeah,
just like or if you were like even in a kid's game, like if you were Mario, you would not want to jump into that painting.
yeah, no, but you're right.
You
It's
know
more
it's
Dark Souls. It is,
it's
it
gonna
is
be a
Dark
bad time on
Souls.
the other side.
Like somebody played a lot of Dark Souls and was like,
Yep.
"This is I want to do final boss."
Yep.
And you have to wonder to what extent somebody like Charles with his ego goes, "Final boss? Okay."
Yeah. As long as I'm the big bad, then it's fine,
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
You're saying there are mini bosses under me. Those are like dukes and earls and things. Yeah, that's fine.
Yes. So, which brings us to this. So, this is one of the questions I always like to ask authors, as just
Good.
kind of a way for readers to get to know you. Is if you were in a Dungeons and Dragons style fantasy world, or Dark Souls, or Elden Ring,
Sure.
something like that, what
Sure.
would be your race and class?
Oh man. Okay. I've thought about this many times, and I think all gamers have thought about this many times. Some of us have probably tried to stat ourselves out in real life and then gotten depressed when we realize our strength is like a 3 or something.
Yes,
We're like,
yes.
oh, this wouldn't go well.
My insight is very low.
Right. But I think just kind of analyzing the way I make my way through the world, I would probably be a multi-class. I think I'm a sorcerer and a bard at the same time. Um,
That
I
sounds
think,
right.
yeah, like there's a little bit of wild magic about what I do, so I'll sort of manifest, my will in the world as best I can, and then weird side effects will happen, but sometimes they're positive, and sometimes they're just more chaos. So I think, yeah, there's some wild magic going on there. And then the bard thing. I'm a charisma build. I
Yeah.
make friends, I hang out with people, I like to make people laugh and goof around and make connections and collaborate. So, you know, as an entertainer, it would be weird if I didn't have some bard in me, I think.
Yes, yes. And what about race? Which way would you go there?
That's a tougher one for me, but I think I've always been attracted to like the exotic races. And I think I'm a dragonborn. I think not only do I have an affinity for dragons, but I also get very cold and very hot easily. So I
Yes,
feel like,
yes.
it's the external temperatures, right? Like my environment affects my general health and mood. I haven't figured out how to change color yet. I'm working on that.
I mean, yeah, I was actually thinking about dyeing my beard for Pride Month. We always do the Portland Pride, and one
Hmm.
year I did a rainbow beard, and I'm like, maybe I'll just start doing like hey, I'm going gray enough. Then maybe I'll,
Yeah,
a color change beard would be a potential connection to that desire to
absolutely. And it would
um,
pop. I mean,
that's
nothing pops like a hot pink beard.
well, and I was thinking of like silver. So people see it from a distance, they're like, oh, it's gray. And then they get close and they're like, no, that's weird. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like from a distance, I can pass for normal, but no, that's
There
a
you
weird
go.
dude right there.
I've been thinking I have some beard jewelry that I bought a few years ago at a Renaissance fair, and I've been thinking I'm like, I could probably just rock this
Oh yeah.
normally. I
Oh,
could just kind of walk around and be that guy with the beard jewelry.
it is surprisingly so I'll do that. I'll put the beard beads in, one a day when I'm like, oh, it's poofing out all over the place. So I'll put it,
Yeah.
and I'll walk into a, 7-Eleven or whatever. And it is so surprising who compliments you. It's like
Uh,
the little old white ladies, like, those are neat. And you're like, really? I did not think you would be a beard bead fan. And then like one of my friends who like she totally followed the Grateful Dead around and she's super cool and she was like
yeah.
beard beads and I was like you hate the beard beads
Wow.
so yeah it's a different kind of Rorschach for folks
For
okay, so
sure.
you are a dragonborn sorcerer bard and
Mhm.
you're ambushed in the woods, three
Uh-oh.
level 1 goblins. What do you do?
What do I do? All right. Well, I did bring a 20 cider just in case this happened, and
Okay.
I want to show you too for the benefit of the YouTube viewers. It's in a mimic.
Oh, that's awesome.
See, he opened it up. He's
Did you
got
make
dice
that?
inside. Yeah,
That
that's
is
my
very
dice
cool.
mimic. But I might not need them. We'll see what happens here. You may make me roll for something. I'm
Okay.
ready to go if I do.
I
But
mean,
honestly,
we could roll for initiative, but let's say you're first in the order.
not 20.
Yes.
All right. Um, so I'm gonna parlay. Honestly, I'm gonna talk to the goblins. I'm not the murder hobo type. I'm not gonna be like, aha, I must slay you, evildoers. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm all about like let's chill. The dwarfs probably got some pipe weed. Let's chill a little bit around the fire, talk this out. Um, I've always kind of been that guy. I'm like, no, I'd rather, use my social, use the cha skills.
Yes.
And we were actually several years ago, we did an escape room here in the Chicagoland area for a birthday party of mine. This was a little while back now, but the theme of that room was you're trapped in a room with a zombie, right? So you've got to get out. And the thing is, there's a zombie. They actually have an actor. They have a zombie in the middle of the room on a chain. And every 5 minutes, the chain gets a foot longer.
Oh my
So you're,
gosh.
yeah, the room is slowly getting cut off, and you're starting to like, stick to the edges of the room because if the zombie gets you, you're done.
You're done.
You have to leave. Yeah, you're and your friends, whoever's left, can still try to, escape.
Oh,
So it was such a cool concept. I'm like, I love this so much. So I did something that, and they told us afterward when we were kind of decompressing, they told us nobody had ever tried this tactic. That was the first thing that came to my mind. They said nobody's ever done that before. The zombie had the batteries that we needed for this like crane arm thing that we had to use to get a clue or whatever. And the implication was that, well, somebody's going to have to sacrifice themselves to
yeah.
get these because somebody's going to have to go up there and try to get the batteries. The zombie will kill you, but you can throw us the batteries, and they're like, yeah, you may have to sacrifice some people along the way. So I'm like watching the zombie interact with these batteries and like being like fascinated by this human thing or whatever. So I started grabbing these little toys and I scooched over toward the zombie on my belly and I started to like kind of distract the zombie. And then after a while, I'm like, I basically arranged a trade with
Yeah.
this zombie, treating it like a child or a vicious animal or whatever. I'm just like, you want to, look, this is a little dinosaur. It moves, whatever. Zombie gave me the batteries. I gave the zombie the dinosaur. And they told me afterward, they're like, nobody's ever tried that,
Yeah.
ever. And I'm just like, well, it's like the zombie was fascinated by this thing.
Yeah.
Babies get fascinated by items all the time. You could probably fool them by, jingling some keys and then taking the thing.
Engage
So,
the zombie. Yes.
yeah. So I think I'd probably engage the goblins as well. I'd be like, what's up, guys? How's it going?
There's got to be that's a song there. Engage the zombie. I mean, you've got to write that song. That is right in your wheelhouse. That is awesome.
Engage the zombie.
Right? Okay, so we're going to go to our commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Special announcement time. NotAPipe Publishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, this show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone. 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60 second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Cold Rising. Algo and their team of enforcers take on the underbelly of Geneva megacity before being sent on a mission to Mars, a cesspit of corporate exploitation. Suong, a child laborer, must turn the heart of Agent Algo while the fate of Mars, her friends, and her family hang in the balance. Cold Rising. Cold Rush novella, available now on Amazon.
In 1883, the famous German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche put forth the idea of the Übermensch, the Superman. In my latest novel, Project Übermensch, Geoffrey Cannon is either a modern-day messiah or the product of a military experiment gone awry. Either way, the young, inspirational guru has mad powers and metaphysical skills. But Geoffrey's life as spiritual healer and speaker takes a dark turn when some devotees, young women he's had brief affairs with, are inexplicably murdered under grisly circumstances, and rumors of Bigfoot and Sasquatch abound. Amazon is the best place to find my books. That's Lonnie Busch, Busch with a C like the beer. I hope you'll check them out.
Authors, poets, screenwriters, writers of all kinds. We're putting together our team for the Alzheimer's Association's annual The Longest Day fundraiser, and we want you to join us to use your writing superpowers for a good cause. Our team, Writing Against the Darkness, joins together via Zoom or in-person meetups and writes from dawn until dusk on the summer solstice. So mark your calendars for Thursday, June 20th, 2024. We're teaming up with some wonderful partner organizations to build our team, thanks to the Author Alchemy Summit, Indigo Editing, Unsolicited Press, Pile Press, the Pile Press magazine Chunk, and Overcup Press for joining with NotAPipePublishing in this fundraiser. There are links to all of those partners in the show notes. If you want to get to network with writers from these great partners, get a whole lot of writing done, and raise funds for Alzheimer's research and care for families suffering from this disease, click on the link in the show notes and join the team. You're going to be writing anyway. Why not write even more and do some extra good for the world? See you there. Welcome back, everybody. So, Michael, when you've been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about lately? Because daydreaming is kind of procrastination and kind of the process, like, it's integral. So, what's been, just floating around?
Honestly, what's been on my mind lately, we've already touched on a little bit. And I was talking to one of my colleagues about this just the other day. Kindness, being decent to each other. And part of this came up because so I guess I can announce it here because it's been officially announced, but I am a guest of honor at AuthorCon coming up in St. Louis in October.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, this is
Congratulations.
my thank you. This is my first time ever being a guest of honor at a convention. Like I go to cons and
Oh,
I
yeah.
pay my way there and all that other stuff. But this is the first time I've ever been asked as a
Yeah.
guest. I'm going to be doing some sort of entertaining, ridiculous thing.
Right.
It's a huge charity con, so donating my time and ridiculousness to that. But I was talking about how that kind of happened, and really the genesis of it was making friends, like
Right.
just being a nice person. And one of their board members is the wonderful Brian Keene, who's
Mm,
a big horror author. He's got a huge following, and he has always been a big brother figure to a lot of us in small press, and especially in horror, in bizarro, in kind of the weird section, where he's the kind of guy who, if he has a platform, he will reach down and pull people up. And to me, that's what we should all be doing. I
oh,
really
yeah.
truly believe that a rising tide raises all ships. And if I have the ability to highlight or help other people below where I'm at, I'm going to do the same. Um,
Yes.
and
Particularly in writing, like,
oh yeah,
I present about this at conferences and that kind of thing. If it was, Nike versus Adidas, or if it was Coke versus Pepsi, a human being cannot drink Coke and Pepsi simultaneously. Like,
right,
nobody's wearing a Nike and an Adidas. They really are competitive enterprises.
right,
Whereas if somebody reads one of your books and says, I loved this book so much, you know what? Michael's book has inspired me to simply read more, then you
absolutely,
have helped me. So I
absolutely,
want people to read your books and realize how much fun they can have reading. So yeah,
yes,
encouraging one another. We are not in the kind of we are competing. We're not competing with one another. We're competing with Netflix. Like, we are
yes,
competing with every other attention suck. And I want people to be reading your books rather
absolutely.
than, and you look at the big names, your Gabino, Iglesias, your
Mhm.
Stephen King, Keen. These folks have made it a part of their persona to help other authors. And
Yes,
that's one of the reasons why they are so admired. Neil Gaiman is wonderful. Two other authors, John Scalzi, like these
yep.
folks that I follow, where I'm like, it's so great that they are so supportive of other folks in the field.
Absolutely. And that is, that's the prime example of how to be, and it also leads to collaborations. It leads
Mm.
to more opportunities because, I had, there was a small fracture years ago in the Bizarro scene, and somebody who had left the scene was complaining about what they perceived as nepotism.
Mm.
And my basically my response to that was, what you experienced wasn't nepotism. What you experienced is, this person came in with an ego. They were expecting a certain color of smoke to be blown up there
Yeah.
behind, and they didn't get that. And they didn't want to play nice with the community. They wanted to be
Yeah.
a lone wolf. They wanted to be on their own, Mister. I'm too bad for this. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not how any of this
Not how it
works. Like,
works.
no, like, you know, the thing is, it's just like what we learned in kindergarten. It's being nice to people and making friends. Because if I've got any opportunity. If I'm I don't know, running an oil rig and I need a person to work on my oil rig, and I've got six applications, but one of them is somebody I already know, and I know they're a hard worker, and I know they're easy to get along with, and they don't cause trouble. I'm going to hire that person
Right.
because I have prior experience with them, and I know they're a decent person. Everything is like that, and
And
it's
I am
not hard
sympathetic
to
to
be
the
kind.
Yeah, and I am sympathetic to the fact that that networking can feel like gatekeeping when somebody's
Mhm.
new, and
Yeah,
there are elements of it that are problematic where, if you and I
sure.
are like, hey, we hang out, we get along really well, and this new person who came along is very different. And so if, people of color, women have often
Oh
felt
yes,
like the networking excludes because people are going, well, these are my friends. And we
right.
naturally become friends with people where it's like, oh, you remind me of a friend from across the hall in college.
Sure.
Well, that's going to be another, statistically, probably another white dude, right?
Yeah.
So like there are ways that the networking, but as long as we are sensitive to that and saying, hey, we're welcoming folks in, it is a remarkably welcoming community for folks who are willing to kind of reach out and say, I'm not going to, do this on my own. And I feel like horror might be better than a lot of other communities in that regard. Like
I
I know
think it
there are a lot
is.
of folks who are on, who
Um,
are disabled, a lot of women who are
yeah.
excellent writers who are being recognized in the horror world, people of color. So horror might
Yes.
be a more welcoming community. I mean, people don't think horror welcoming, but it really is a pretty, good community in that
It
way.
is. I have a theory about that actually. I think and I've talked about this on panels before. I think, I'm seeing, yeah, more LGBT
Yeah.
representation in horror, more women in horror, more people of color in horror, you know, and it's wonderful to see that, to see that diversity exploding, and we're getting so many more different kinds of stories in the genre, which is healthy for the genre. And I think that we are able to do that in horror and in bizarro and in the weird because number one, most of us are outsiders in one way or another.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
I mean, I was a high school goth kid. I was like, I was constantly bullied and whatever. And it's like I get the feeling of being excluded and you can't control that.
Okay, so I got to tell you, I was listening to you have a song, The Goth
Oh,
Kid,
okay.
which made me laugh so hard because I was like, I feel seen. So folks should check out Flood Damage, The Goth Kid. I was like, oh my gosh, I hate Christmas. I was laughing so hard. But yes, same thing. Like
Yeah,
I was goth before that was a term. I was just the weird kid who was wearing black all the time and hiding in paperback books, right?
exactly.
There was not a goth scene in Cincinnati, Ohio when I was in high school. Like,
I had a wonderful conversation a few years ago with a hip hop artist at a show I was at, and I was talking about like I grew up with industrial and cold wave and stuff, and he was straight up like old school Chicago rough neighborhood hip hop
cassette
guy,
tapes.
and we started talking about the things. Obviously, there are many many different experiences. He's dealing with institutional racism on an extremely high level and all these other things, but we started talking about our similar experiences and how much understanding there was between us when we started talking about I was an angry kid
Yes.
who couldn't get out of where I was, who people didn't really want to listen to or understand what I was into or interested in. And there was so much crossover.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I think, yeah, horror really gets that because we're still an outsider community to some
Right.
degree. And also, I think we get our horror and violence and terror out on the page
And
so
then are
we can be
kinder.
really kind, wonderful,
Yes.
loving
No,
people.
it really is true.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like if you get into some of these scenes where you presume like the heavy metal scene and you think,
Yeah.
oh, these people are all going to be really violent and awful, and they're like incredibly sweet and kind, and it's
Yep.
because they kind of there's catharsis, and then on the flip
Yep.
side of that, everybody's like, yeah, no, actually, we're really sweet to each other.
Yeah, I mean, the scariest stories I hear about like people's scenes, honestly, the romance scene is terrifying.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
read so many stories about like I'm like, oh my God. Like, but yeah, of course, they're not getting that catharsis. They're not getting the evil out on the page. They have
yeah.
to keep it pent up.
The pent up. I mean, it's just like in other spheres of our society. Where are there more sociopaths than anywhere else? Wall Street. Like
Yeah,
the people who are buttoned up are the folks who are going, oh, okay, where am I going to vent this now? At
exactly.
Grandma's pension fund,
Exactly. It comes out into the real world, which is a very scary place for it.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, so I guess that's my main thing lately is it's not hard to be kind. It's really not. People choose not to be for various reasons, but it isn't hard. And I find over the long term, it's worth it because I want to be remembered as somebody who is easy to work with, who is fun to be around, who you could do interesting projects with. I don't want the short-term games that come from, wow, that guy stepped on people. Like that's not me. It'll never be me. And I don't want it to be anybody that I'm close with either.
Yeah, I think in the attention economy, there's so much pressure to get, eyeballs fast, and
Yeah,
being awful can get you a lot of attention quickly.
true.
But it's not good attention, and in the long run, it's very isolating. And I would much rather, have people go, okay, well, there's a smaller group of people who noticed, oh, over time, supporting others, rather
Absolutely.
than, oh yeah, I said something really awful to somebody, and yeah, it got a lot of retweets, but then I'm just the awful person who's engaging in that. Like, but I recognize that pressure to go, what is the ostentatious thing that's going to get, a ton of attention because it's so terrible?
I
Yeah,
mean,
you get
the
attention by
music
being
scene
terrible.
is, yeah, the music scene's vicious like that too. I mean, the music industry, it creates really vicious people. I've literally been told by people I was close to some of the things that people I thought were friendly were saying about like myself or other people that I was close to or whatever. And literally things like, well, these are the kind of people you have to step on the way up or whatever. I'm like, who thinks that way? Like,
Yeah,
what is wrong with you, you sociopaths?
yeah,
So I've always said, but I especially now that I have begun to establish myself as a professional creative, I'm like the people who are kind and loving and caring and want to help. I'm going to hold those people as close to me as possible, and the rest of the people, I can be completely civil with even the biggest, jerks, but they're staying at an arm's length.
yeah, yeah.
There's not a trust there, and I think
Well,
that
yeah,
trust
and I
is
think, yeah,
key.
if somebody has adopted that mentality of I need to crush everyone around me,
Hmm.
they tell on themselves pretty fast.
Yep,
And, those are the folks where you're going, this is not somebody I'm going to want to work with because this is the way they operate. And not only is that going to, am I going to be somebody they're going to be stepping on, but they're going to be stepping on my friends. Like,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So
Um,
yeah, not interested in that kind of
And I just think it's
negativity
short-sighted.
and
Like, I
awfulness.
don't think
Yeah,
it works in the long run. I think, yes, you can, flash in the pan, you can get a lot of attention by being awful. And in the long run, it's this group of friends who are going to say, check out this person's work. And I want to have been somebody in their career who was lifting them up. That I think
absolutely.
that's so important. So what else is going on right now that you want our listeners to know about career-wise?
Well, career-wise, let's see. Career-wise, I guess I'm working on some new stuff, of course. I'm hoping there are a few new books to come along the way eventually. I'm a much slower writer than I should be, which is why I'm doing this lovely podcast because I understand the fine art of procrastination. But
Yes, yes.
yeah, right now, honestly, a lot of it is just pushing to get reviews on some of the books that already exist. Jurrasichrist was my big one in 2021. And then I have this wonderful picture book that I put out with Jim Egpalza last year called The Last 5 Minutes of the Human Race, which was the other winner.
Yeah,
It's 26 little apocalypses, one for each letter of the alphabet. So it's like an alphabet primer,
that's awesome.
all the ways in which the human race will end.
And are all the images, the letter B with a image of the apocalypse kind of a thing?
The images are insane. Jim Egpalza is an amazing artist, and they're like full scenes
Yeah.
of like these various apocalypti, I guess.
Apocalypti? I don't know what the term is either. And I am a high school English teacher, so I do
Apocalypses?
that.
I don't know.
Apocalypses? Yeah.
But
But that sounds really, really cool. And I love that kind of collaboration. Somebody
oh
who's
yeah.
got that eye, and then you're doing the text, and those books are really fun. Is
Well,
it
I'm
is it
hoping that oh, I'm sorry.
how long did the book come out to be?
It's so it's my first coffee table book. So it's unfortunately it's a little more expensive than we'd like, but it costs a lot to make because it's a hardcover with like full page illustrations. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful book. It's got 26 letters and an ampersand. So
Nice.
27 pages of text and 27
Oh, okay.
full page illustrations.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
very, very cool. That sounds right up. That's my kind of coffee table book.
Oh yeah, it's
That's
beautiful. Well, and it led to other things. And this is again, we're talking about collaborating with people and how you get to know them and want to work with them more. I am pitching right now can't really announce much of anything because nothing's happened yet, but I'm pitching my first ever children's book,
Oh, cool.
which Jim is working on illustrating for me. So we've already won an award together. We figure why not go for
Right.
broke, do some more
Now,
stuff.
children's book genuinely for children, or one of these children's books
Genuinely,
that's really for adults?
genuinely this time.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, that's an exciting, that's a challenging world though. That's
it
there's a
is.
lot of folks not competing, not competitive. Again, we are not competing against one another, but there are a lot of folks producing children's books, and so breaking through there is really tough.
You
And
know,
so
I guess
are you going trad publishing for that, hopefully?
I'm gonna try. So that's one of the things I'm doing right now is, well, it ties back to what we were talking about earlier. So again, being a multi-threat artist, being kind of all over the map, I've always advised, especially younger content creators, I'm like, don't limit yourself artificially by deciding what a thing needs to be
Yeah.
before you've even made the thing. I'm a big fan of follow the idea until it ends up being something. So I have an idea. I hope it's probably a short story or a book, but it might be a poem, it might be a song, it might be a performance art piece, it might be a burlesque number. I don't know
Right.
yet. I'm going to follow the idea until it reveals itself to be what it is. Why say, well, I'm a poet, so I have to write poetry.
Right.
Well, maybe you're a poet that wrote a play, and that's
Right.
okay. So I think that's kind of what I'm getting to that point now in my career where I'm hoping to be agented eventually, like many of us are. So I'm kind of trying to query a few things out there and see what happens. But I've got the children's book. In addition to my first children's book, I also am pitching my first collection of nonfiction,
Mm.
which is actually about old video games and based on a series of articles I did a while back. But this would be expanding that into a book length. Um, Pitching possibility of some short story collection stuff, and then I'm working on at least one novel very slowly right now. So I'm kind of all
Yeah.
over the map
Well,
once
and I can
again.
imagine those might end up being, different ones of those will appeal to different agents, who say,
Absolutely.
I've got that, that's right in my wheelhouse, that's what I know how to sell. And so that's going to be interesting too, to see who nibbles at what,
Yeah,
and
we'll
then
see.
realizes, oh, there's a lot to work with here. But yeah, that's cool. I wish you luck. For folks who are
Thank you.
listening, like the publishing world is, some folks do try and fall into a groove, and I agree with you, Michael. Like I'm a big believer in the hybrid. If
Yeah.
that piece finds a wonderful home with a small press, and this other one goes to the big four, and this other one is self-published, great. Like the art will, can find an audience in many different ways. But if you want to go big four, for folks who are listening, that's agented. That's, somebody who then says, I can sell this to, and it's not just the big four, they can sell it. There are a few small presses that are huge. And
Yeah.
then there, the small press route, the individual author can pitch their piece to small presses generally without an agent. And then the world of self-publishing, you can put anything out in the world you want tomorrow. I don't recommend it. Like, you have to
Right.
learn how to do that. But that offers authors now a lot of flexibility in terms of how they get their stuff out into the world. And then it's breaking through. And just because you've got something with the big four does not mean it will break through either. Like, that's,
Absolutely.
but yeah, that's cool that you've already got the small press thing with the zines and your own work, and then do the agented thing. You've got that experience too, to be able to navigate these kind of complicated worlds.
I hope so. I really am. I'm learning as I go. I mean, that's, every day I'm learning something new, and a lot of it is, I guess that's something too that theater taught me is, I always had colleagues who were kind of waiting around to be like cast and have their big break or whatever, and I'm like, that's not
Yes.
going to happen. Like you have to make art happen.
Yeah.
Like that's what you
No,
have to do.
the theater industry is really analogous. If you're sitting around going, I will just be on Broadway someday,
Hmm.
that's not the way it works. You're going to be in your community theater. You're going to
Yep.
be doing independent stuff with a group of friends. You're going to be trying to do lots of different, and you're going to be walking around with headshots in Hollywood. Like,
Hmm.
there are all these different ways to get out there. And if you limit yourself to one, you're going to be waiting tables for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And why not diversify your possibilities? Like I said, as somebody who's always just kind of drifted toward a little bit of everything, it also makes sense to treat the business side of it that way a little
Yeah.
bit, you know. I know I've talked before, like I mentioned Brian Keene earlier, who's given me a lot of good career advice, or John Skip, who's another classic author, you know, New York Times best-selling author who's been around, made movies and written books and whatever. They've both talked about like, you know, the New York Times best-selling big press thing is great, but I know that like Keene has said he's made more money since he got all his rights back and went all small press and
Yep.
self-pub again because he now has control of his work and how it's distributed and where and when. So there's no one size fits all, you know?
Well,
And
and even if there were, I mean, you were talking about, that willingness to learn. Even if you knew exactly how the industry works today, it's going to be different tomorrow. It's
yeah,
changing so fast that the folks who are willing to say, "Oh, okay, I'm trying this new thing. I'm putting out." There are like novelizations being made on Twitch now into
yeah,
like animated, like that's a whole new kind of mixed media version of a novel that is exciting. I'm interested to see where that goes from here. So folks who are saying, no,
absolutely.
this is the one thing that I do. I mean, I work with authors all the time who are like, I don't do social media at all. And I'm like, okay, but it's kind of important to,
Yeah.
to let people know you write books. Otherwise you're writing a diary. So it
Yep.
is tough.
It is. And it's not fun to do those things, but it's necessary. You know, you have to tell people that you exist.
Yeah.
There's especially these days when we're competing against, you know, not only what, 1 million books come out every year or something like that, and we're competing against not only those, but every book that's still in print
Right.
from all the
Yes.
years
They've not
before
gone
that.
away.
And then every form of entertainment beyond that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and it's like, yeah, you have to, people aren't just gonna find you by accident.
Right.
You have to put yourself out there and try at least. And
Yeah.
again, make connections with people. And it's not about, you know, I don't make connections with people on the basis that I think they'll be able to do something for me.
Right.
That's when it gets gross.
People can tell if it is
Yeah,
just this, my relationship with you serves me. That's gross. Like nobody
yeah,
wants to feel used.
right.
So,
Be genuine. That's the biggest piece of advice. Like just be genuine and be friendly and be kind and be open to opportunities when they arrive
yeah,
and pursue them with the diligence and the seriousness that you can and try new things. I mean,
yeah,
I really truly believe all that, you know.
yeah. Totally agree. So, speaking of lifting somebody up, what's in your TBR pile where folks should be another author you are
Oh,
excited to read that some people should be checking out?
well, my to read bookshelf is actually
Yes,
has become a book.
exactly. Yes.
It's become a bookcase. I'm looking at it right now. It's here in my office. It's one of those Billy bookcases from IKEA with the 5 shelves.
Yes.
I'm actually double stacking now, so there's books
Yep.
in front of
Yep.
books, and
Yep.
that's my to read pile. Oh my
This
God, it's
room that I'm in is on the second floor of my house on the corner, and I think it may challenge the structural integrity of the
oh
house
God.
to have this much weight. Like you walk in and the
Um,
floors creak because this is a lot of weight on.
yeah. But you know what? There's worse problems to have,
That's
right?
right. If this is the way that I
Right?
go, I've told my partner, if this is the way that I go, is that I am buried in books at the end of my life, I'm pretty satisfied with that.
He died as he lived,
Yeah, exactly.
buried in books. Yeah. I think the biggest thing on my to read for a while now has been The Devil Takes You Home, Gabino Iglesias.
I have not read that, but I am looking forward to that one as well.
I've been meaning to read that forever, and Gabino, not only is he like a great example of again people who like to help people
Mhm.
up or whatever, but he and I came up together. We were
Oh,
at the first
really?
couple of yeah, we were at the first couple of Bizarro cons together out in Portland, Oregon. And I remember when like each of us got our first books published through the New Bizarro Author Series. I remember when we were both like brand new authors and just sitting next to him at a table and being like, wow, you know, whatever. And then he, you know, in the last several years, he absolutely exploded.
Yeah. Well, he's one of
But
those folks. He does TikTok really well.
mhm,
And so people are realizing like, oh, and this is another thing that, folks and we as authors need to realize is folks want to have a relationship with us as authors, which is, I
yeah,
think, our best protection against AI. Like the AI will
yes,
never be able to say, oh, not only did I write this book, but also hang out on my TikTok and get to know me as a human being because it's not.
absolutely.
And so he's fighting AI by being a good person on on TikTok and trying
Absolutely.
and
Well, that's
sometimes failing. Like I
yeah.
remember there was a big controversy and he got out ahead of it, kind of out over his skis, and then had to walk back and go, you know what, I should have said something sooner, but I wanted to wait, and that was hard. And I really felt for him, where I was like, yeah, he is presenting himself as a genuine human being who is trying to be
Absolutely.
there for a friend, and also, oh shoot, I should have said something, and that's real.
Yeah, well, that's why my Patreon has worked. I don't have a ton of subscribers, but the ones I do are extremely loyal, and I'm giving them as much as I can of myself.
Yes.
And I mean, coming from a very grassroots kind of place, starting with small press and just weird self-pub stuff and whatever, gave me a real appreciation of sort of that word of mouth, slow organic spread of people who know you, but then they'll tell people who don't necessarily know you. And I remember the first times I got sales of books from places I didn't know anyone, and it blew my mind.
Right.
It's just like, wait, this isn't a family or friend. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
somebody
I
who
had
just
somebody walk up to me at a
bought my
con because
book.
I do the cons too, and I had somebody walk up to me and tell me they were a fan of my work, and it was the
Yes.
first person who said that I didn't know. I was like racking my brain. I was like, but how do I know you? Because you must know me. There's no way that you possibly are a fan of my work and we haven't met before. No, it was somebody who just read my books, and that was
I
I was like on cloud nine.
It's amazing. Well, and I can totally empathize with that. That happened to me in a big way for the first time at Book Fest this last just several months ago here. Like 3 or 4 times a day, people would stop me and tell me they were a fan of mine.
Yeah,
A- And that like I'm
it's
like, do I owe you
mind-boggling.
money? Do I need to hug you?
Yes,
I don't know.
yes,
But it's nice when you realize that again, especially if you stay at it long enough, it's a war of attrition. You stay at it for a while, people start to notice,
right.
and you're going to touch some of those people, and
Yeah,
they're going to come back for more. And that's all that's all I ever wanted,
yep.
is to be
Well, and
able to put my art out into the world and have it connect with somebody.
I tell, this message for everybody out there in the world, like if you think, oh, I'm a fan, and I shouldn't go up and tell this person I'm a fan, please, please, please. Go up to Michael, tell him you're a fan, because
Oh God, yes.
I want, the folks are going, oh, would it be weird for me to ask for a selfie? And I'm like, no, I want a copy of that
Yeah.
picture too. Like, you
Yeah.
are a fan of mine. I need that. It's
I,
so
I am a
great.
I am a fan of my fans
Yes.
being my fans. So yes, please,
Yes,
please
let's
tell
let's
me.
get that picture.
Yeah, like I don't know if all authors and musicians and whatever. Well, I know musicians aren't, but are like me in that they can't generate their own self-esteem. It all comes
Yes.
from external
Oh yeah.
sources, because of brokenness and mental
Uh-huh.
illness,
I,
whatever
I
else.
had a dog named External Validation. Because she would come running up and it was like, yes, this is what I need today. Like
Yep.
I cannot produce that on my own. I need my external validation.
I don't
Absolutely.
have the ability to make those brain
Yeah.
chemicals, so please share yours with me.
Yes. Yes, please make my day. So where can folks find you to get on that Patreon?
Oh, well, the Patreon is patreon.com/michaelallenrose. Almost everything online you can find me under Michael Allen Rose. So www.michaelallenrose.com. My link tree is linktr.ee/Michael Allen Rose. And my Patreon, yes, is patreon.com/Michael Allen Rose. The Patreon's awfully fun. I've been doing it for almost, I guess, over 5 years now. Only missed a couple months here and there, but
Yeah.
overall, it's been like I have this massive collection now of these weird zines and chapbooks I've put out, which is also nice because once in a while I'll make one re-available for a con or something and do like a con version,
Yeah,
which is a nice way to like make a couple bucks at the table and give people something cool and like hand stapled. And it's
that's a good
like,
idea.
it's something unique that they can't just buy at a store. It's like
Yeah.
this is something special that I have touched. Like the creator has created this and signed it, and it's yours now. I think there's
Yes.
something really special about that.
For the first time, I was working on the my next novel that comes out this next summer,
Mhm.
and I literally wrote an object into the story so that when folks buy the book, they'll get this necklace with a little glow in the dark thing. And I'll make these little necklaces for
Oh,
everybody because it's an essential plot point of the book. So I
that's
was
awesome.
thinking about how do I make sure that somebody has a thing that goes with this, because we found that, when we're at cons, people want a thing, like they want something
Yep.
other than the book. And so I was like, as I was writing, I was like, what could be, and it's in a very goofy, funny way because it's presented like this is this magic totemic item, and then later in the book you find out no, it's totally unimportant.
Ooh,
But that
MacGuffin.
somebody who gets the book is like, I've got the totally unimportant thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that kind of thing.
you're right. Um, so what would be a recommendation of who else you think I should have on the show?
You know, I have so many wonderful friends in small and indie press stuff. The first person I thought of is Bridget D. Brave.
Hmm.
She
I
is
don't know her work.
yes, she's a horror author. She's relatively new. She came from the fan fiction community originally.
Which, no shade, fanfic is
Yeah,
legit. I meet people and they'll
absolutely.
say to me like, I read fanfic, and I'm like, that's all Shakespeare
Yep.
ever wrote. No
Right,
shade.
right,
Fanfic is legitimate.
exactly. But yeah, Bridget is awesome. She's funny. We met at StokerCon, I think it was 2 years ago, through our mutual good friend Danger Slater, who's been one of my rolling buddies forever. And Bridget she's a lawyer in like her real life day job, and she uses that in really smart ways when she does like readings and things. She actually gave a talk at BizarroCon this last year to give legal advice to Bizarro authors in case they get into various scraps and scrapes. But of course, it was all BS, but
Yeah.
it was hilarious. But she's awesome, and she's actually going to be in that anthology, that fragile
Oh,
anthology
cool.
that I mentioned. Hers
Gotcha.
is one of the stories. But yeah, so she's my personal lawyer in any legal matter that isn't actually a legal matter.
Yes, that's in an extra dimensional court.
Right, exactly.
Oh, that's great. Oh yeah, I will
Yeah,
absolutely reach out. That she sounds wonderful.
yeah, she's
Um,
great.
Okay, so some folks I got to thank before we get to our final advice for our listeners. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. Thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com. Check out the amazing books by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Check out Michael's Jurrasichrist and tell a friend about it. And give it that 5th star. You will make Michael's day. It really does genuinely make a difference. Write those reviews and for this show as well. I'm too old to say smash that like button, but gently tap on it an odd number of times. I'd really appreciate that. And so that brings us to our send off. So, Michael, what would your advice be for folks out there listening?
My best advice, I think, is that artists are like sharks, in that if we don't keep moving forward, we stop breathing and die. So always move forward, despite the chaos, make art happen.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I can't improve upon that. So that's a good place to stop, except to say, remember, no matter what happens this week, no matter how much you procrastinate, Michael and I are still proud of you.
Yeah.
If I take my time, I make up my mind.